back with a Tim Talk, and about a month ago I spoke with James Soutar, and James is in Hong Kong, and at the time James offered to give us a perspective on what life was like after, I think it had been 6 weeks, James, that you'd sort of been under the influence of the COVID virus.
Yeah, 6 to 8, something like that, exactly.
Yeah, so just giving a perspective on what things were like, and I I remember you saying that there's enough toilet paper, and it's
Mhm.
just the trucks have to get through. I think we're largely through that hysteria,
Yeah,
but maybe you could just give us a sense of what the past month has been like for you. That the month that I think we're starting, and
sure.
keeping in mind, we keep in mind you're in Hong Kong and it's a little different, but just give us your story over sort of the past month.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. And it's interesting you brought up the toilet paper thing. I do remember I mentioned that, and I believe I said something like, "Look, the toilet paper will be there, but if everybody goes and buys 10 times what they need, they can't replenish it, but they'll replenish it, eventually." And I believe you're back to the point now where no one's worried about that kind of stuff anymore. And I think that a lot of the patterns in this, it's both the disease itself, and what happens in society have followed fairly closely around the world. So in Hong Kong, just to give an update, we in about early or sorry, yeah, about mid to late March, the number of cases went down into in really into single digits on a daily basis. And again, Hong Kong is a large city, so a city with big suburb areas of about 7.5 to 8 million people. And then what happened was, as Europe and the U.S. got worse, many people, that Hong Kong residents that were overseas, came back to Hong Kong, and some of them brought what we call imported cases. So the case numbers went up, and the government got stricter. My son, for example, Alistair, who actually studies in Canada, quite close to where you are, out in the Eastern Townships, when he realized his school wasn't going to be starting anytime soon, we brought him back as well. And his experience was, when he landed at the airport, he was given a tracer bracelet and told to stay at home for 2 weeks, measure his temperature twice a day with a form and everything. And we followed those protocols, and there were so the number of cases in Hong Kong went up, and now they've come back down again. So today we had one new case in Hong Kong. That case was a 19-year-old girl that was studying in the UK and came back and was in quarantine. And while she was in quarantine, it was found that she had the virus. Again, I don't think she's very serious. We have 13 people overall in ICU at the moment. Some more in hospital. I can't remember the exact number, but basically in Hong Kong, if you are tested positive for coronavirus, you go to hospital, even if you're the mildest of symptoms. So, as again, we have about 13 or so people in ICU, which is way below our total capacity. So I think overall we're doing pretty well, but there are still some restrictions going on. It's not a full lockdown, far from it. But we all wear masks as we go around our daily lives in Hong Kong. Certain things, bars are closed, gyms are closed. Hopefully, we're going to reopen those next week. Restaurants are open, but you can only be four to a table, and each table has to be 1.5 meters apart from the next table. So it's livable. It's not. I don't think it's anything like what we're seeing in Canada.
Okay, so was it? You said, I think, as we were talking before, this is the sort of most strict that it has been in terms of the closing of the gyms and cinemas and.
Yeah, and it is. So none of those things were closed before. You know, if you wanted to go to cinema, say in early March, you could go, but they had blocked off every second row, and people sat in small groups. And most people didn't go to cinemas anyway. I
Hmm.
remember my wife and my younger son Augie went to a movie, and it was I guess 100 or 150 seat place, and there was like seven people there, so they were all pretty, easily spread out, etc. Um, and remember, people here, we went through SARS. People wear masks all the time here; it's a normal thing. So I would say that Asia, generally speaking, has been more able to accept the social distancing and the kind of protocols that you need to do without a total lockdown, by the way, to minimize the impact of the virus on society. And again, we've had 4 unfortunate deaths in Hong Kong, but that's from January to sort of mid-April. So we're talking about 3.5 months. 4 people have died of COVID that were all in their 70s or 80s. Again, not to minimize it,
No.
but it's not a major health disaster.
Right.
Sure.
Now, you were saying a little earlier too that when you go out, you wear a mask, and that's
Yeah.
we often see that in the news when pictures of Asia are shown. That's been because of pollution. I think I understand, but is that also because of disease or?
Well, yeah. So typically, and this has really started, I guess, in Japan. In Japan, when I used to go to Japan, even in the late '80s and early '90s, people who had a cold would wear a mask so they didn't cough on other people and spread their disease. So it's always come from the perspective of people trying to stop spreading the disease to other people as opposed to catching anything themselves. In parts of mainland China and Vietnam, etc., where it was really polluted, like Beijing for a while when it was really bad, people, yes, they did wear masks to stop the really bad, pollution particles getting into their lungs. But like for example, in 2003, everybody wore masks during SARS here, and there's a feeling that it protects yourself, and it's a sort of, I guess, social obligation that you show other people that you're serious about stopping the spread. There's a lot of discussion about how effective it is. Honestly, I think that if everybody wears masks, you probably cut down the transmission, not to zero, but a significant amount, well over 50% for sure.
Yeah. Okay. And the other thing you were saying before, and I'm just saying this because potentially this is what happens here. I don't know that anyone has a sense of what is coming next in terms. I mean, some people are saying weeks. The good news is the Quebec government has opened up some construction. I think they're starting, believe this or not, James, road repair. Well, nobody's on the roads in Montreal.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Perfect time.
Oh, but
got to put those cones to some good use. Blue beret. No, listen. I think that's right. And look, Tim, I don't have a crystal ball, and
no.
I also want to make it clear that I'm not a doctor. I have no medical qualifications whatsoever. But what I will say, and I think a very important message is that I find in reading online stories, whether they're in newspapers or comments or on Facebook, and some of your listeners may recognize my name from a few discussions I've had on the Knowlton.com Facebook page. Hopefully I haven't offended anyone, but trying to offer just different viewpoints. I would ask people to really try and make sure they're not too fearful. My feeling is globally our level of fear is far too high, and the very high level of fear is maybe causing us to, I won't say overreact, because I'm not in the camp either that thinks this disease isn't real or anything. It's very real. But I think we need a pragmatic, common sense approach that allows people to go out into society, that protects our vulnerable members of society and make sure they're well taken care of, and they're not left alone, or we're not forgetting about them. But really the best way, I think, of protecting most people in society is to allow the able-bodied and healthy people to be productive members of society. And I find that the fear level of, keeping everybody at home, no matter who they are, and people turning on their neighbors for walking their dogs when they should be at home and that type of thing, I don't think it's very productive. And I believe that we should really try to just take a deep breath, think and consider where we are as a human race, really big picture stuff. And I'm sure, and I know that's something you're doing, and I know I've known you for a long time, and you're very good at making, sort of reassuring people and allowing them to feel reassured with their faith and with their position in society and in the world, and I think that's super important, because I think if we become too fearful, we risk taking some ill-advised decisions. I just might put it that way.
Yeah, no, that's great. as I say, it's helpful. Just someone who's been there, that's Back to the Future a little bit. You're
Yeah.
you're where we will be in a month's time. Um,
Look, and Tim,
yeah,
I don't know. Again, I have no crystal ball, and I'm not a doctor, but my job is in the investment world. I help people invest in stock markets around the world, etc. And I really, um, I don't know what the stock market's going to do day to day. That's not really the point. But my part of my job is that I read a lot of, reputable scientists and doctors, and really try and take a dispassionate approach to it, and understand where we are going. And I think that, one thing we have to come to terms with is this virus is not going to be defeated. Like, it's not going to go to zero.
hmm,
Okay, so we have to be aware that, for the next 2 to 3 years, or I don't know, pick your time. I'm not sure exactly. There will be cases of coronavirus going around, and some of them will be mild, and others will be very serious. Um, but we can't wait until the last case is defeated before we go back to work, before we go back to school, before we go back to church, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think that we need to rationally look at how we're going to live in a society where there is a virus that can cause some people very bad outcomes,
yeah,
and learn to live with it, and not just be fearful and hide in, because if we hide and stay indoors and do nothing, our own mental health deteriorates, society falls apart. And again, I don't want to sound too negative here, but
no,
I really think that we've got to take some very rational approaches to this. And again, I'm just to be crystal clear, I am not a doctor, I'm not an epidemiologist,
yeah,
but I consider myself to be reasonably well read on it, and also have seen things around the world. So
yeah.
that's my take.
So one of the things day to day for you is that you mentioned before is you wear a mask, and when you go into a shop or when you go into a store, they take your temperature.
Correct.
Correct. So I mean, potentially that's what the future looks like. We don't know. We don't have a
Sure.
crystal ball,
Yeah.
but maybe that's
I would highly recommend it.
yeah.
And I would say that we can open things up if we make sure that there's supply of masks for people that work at retail outlets such as an IGA or what have you, SAQ or Dépanneur Rouge or whatever you want,
Yeah.
and that people are aware that when they touch certain surfaces, they have a little thing of Purell or whatnot, and they wash their hands afterwards, and all that stuff. For example, I'm less convinced about gloves, because I am convinced about masks. The gloves, people tend to touch things and then they touch other things, and and
Mm.
and because they wear gloves, they're not washing their hands. Um, Gloves protect your fingers, but if you touch your face with your gloved hand, it's not helping. So, in Asia, very few people wear gloves.
Okay.
I would say so. Masks important, sanitation, hygiene important, and but I also think a phased getting back of, of sort of responsible, working and whatnot is I would say for Canada and Quebec is very important. And maybe not today, but maybe in 2 or 3 weeks. But certainly, I think that people will get very antsy as we come into summer if you tell them you've got to stay indoors till September. I think that is not going to go over
Yeah.
well, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Well, and I guess what I heard you say before is that you didn't have the restrictions on restaurants. They came in, and so maybe
Yeah.
there's going to be some of that rolling restriction, some in different
Sure. I mean,
areas.
open restaurants and let them have 50% of their normal capacity.
Yeah.
It's better than zero, I guess, right?
Yeah.
And again, it just encourages people to think responsibly about how they go about their daily lives.
For sure. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for the picture of St. Paul's I see just above your head there.
Oh, you're right. It's there. And I just well spotted.
Hey.
I just want to also flash the logo on my shirt here to let everybody know that I'm dreaming of hockey one day.
Well, we look forward.
Yes, there is the picture of St. Paul's is in our my wife and our study in our room, and it's a picture in winter, and I don't know if you can see from there, but there's the angels. I think it was just before Christmas one year. My wife took that picture, and it's proudly been up there for a number of years in our study room.
Well, that's great. That's great.
Well
Well,
spotted.
thanks so much.
Okay, all the best, and all the best to everyone in Knowlton, and hope to. I won't say bump into you because that's maybe still not the right word, but hope to see you from 6 meters apart in IGA this summer.
That'd be great. Let me just we'll just turn off our
Okay.
thing. There we go.